Morning. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank you for joining us today. We have an exciting show planned. We're on the eve of one of the most consequential elections in American history. Today, I'll be joined by my superstar panel, Attorney Vanita Banks and Attorney Milton. But before we get started, have you went out and voted yet? If not, do so today. Call 10 people up because we're in the fight for our lives today. We see a out of control legislator in most of these states trying to turn back the clock on our civil rights, our individual liberties, in the pursuit of trying to get a foot in the national economy. They're trying to block it. So we have to get out there and vote today. But having said that, locally, this week, I want to start off by saying that I saw some of the most deceptive and dishonest ads I've ever seen. We had a person running for prosecutor that basically put on the screen two things that were just so fraudulent. She claimed that she has the experience to protect us. The lawyer, we look at the director. In Indiana, you can go on the lawyer portal and you can look at every case that every lawyer's done. You know, I got thousands of them. She has 3, none in which she ever appeared in a court of a criminal court in this state. So a person who's running for prosecutor as a Republican has never, ever appeared in court as a prosecutor, the defense attorney, to do a criminal case. And what's disturbing, she did a case involving where they put on evidence, and it was just terrible that we had a situation whereby she could even indict somebody in one of those proceedings where it's not adversarial.
Broke up, Nate.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, also, our call-in number today is 833-653-3529, 833-653-6529. Now, the grand jury process in most states are laid out in order to indict people. And no exception in Indiana. There's a saying among trial lawyers that a prosecutor can indict a ham sandwich for killing a pig. Well, this lawyer couldn't indict someone in a case and says that she has experience. The other thing, though, that disturbed me is that she falsely claimed that our current prosecutor was somehow at fault for 8 people dying at the FedEx facility last year. I have 5 of those victims of the FedEx shooting here in Indianapolis. And the red flags law had nothing to do with this young man going out killing everybody. Absolutely nothing. The police department did investigate. They did try, but under our Republican controlled legislator, everybody in our state can get a gun without a gun permit. So you could be crazy as hell in our state and still get a gun. And so her political party is the one responsible for all these guns being on the street with no prohibition. And then she blamed the prosecutor because some lunatic goes out and murder people. So, and the final thing is that there was a case involving a young man who was a model student in high school, went to college. I knew the young man, but he tragically killed a beautiful young lady, and he was out on bail when he did it. And so she blamed the prosecutor for a person who get out on bail. Never mind the fact that he legally acquired bail, he goes to a hearing, a judge releases him. Also, he pays a bond. And by the way, with no criminal record. So the person had a legal right to be out on bail. So when a lawyer goes on TV and said he is responsible, that's a chronic liar. And you should get out to vote and make sure you don't vote for this person who's a chronic liar named Cindy Caruso. Please, please, please don't fall for that phony stuff that she's talking about. But anyway, Milton, you had the same thing out there in California, your prosecutor. How's he doing out there?
As far as I know, Nate, he's not up for election. He has another 2 years in his position. So I think he feels under attack though by the deputies in his office every day. There's a resistance to implement his policy. So there's a lot of backlash on that from his deputies. So he's under attack. That's how he's doing. He's under attack. But he did, I believe, came into office with a platform of telling the truth of what he wanted to do and what changes he want to make. It's just that those changes are receiving a lot of opposition from the judges and prosecutors.
I see. Attorney Banks, what's the
Yeah.
voter turnout like?
Nate,
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
If Sonia can send me the link, I'm working off an old link and it's not a very good connection. If I could get a new link, I'll try to call on my computer, please.
Okay, she'll send that
Did
right
you hear
away.
me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure, she'll send it out. Attorney Banks, what's the voter turnout like in your neck of the woods?
In the Chicagoland area of Illinois, thousands of citizens have already voted. In fact, across the nation, millions of Americans have already voted. And it is imperative that if you have already voted, that your work is not done. There are 4 days until Tuesday's election. And we are seeing rampant voter intimidation across this nation. Reports of voting machines being stolen by individuals claiming that they are taking those machines for maintenance. We're seeing reports of armed individuals showing up at the polls and intimidating voters and actually following them as they, are leaving the voting locations. And so, as I stated, that early voting is up. People are, voting by either in-person voting in those states that have early voting. Illinois, for example, our early voting began on Monday, October 24th, and it will extend until Monday. Illinois is also one of at least 21 states that allow registration, voters registration on election day. And so it is imperative, and thank you if you have already voted, but again, your work is not done. It is imperative that every American vote in this election because our democracy is on the line. Don't worry about the polls. The polls are likely to be inaccurate because I understand that the electorate has changed. And so we're seeing an increase in young voters, which is very, very encouraging. It's important that if you have not voted, that you have a plan to vote and that you actually work that plan. And so it's important to know that first you need to confirm your voting status and where your polling place is located. And you can find that information at vote.org. And secondly, you should plan, if you have not already voted, how you are going to vote. Are you going to early vote in those states that still permit early voting? Are you voting on election day? Do you plan to mail in your ballot through either a drop box or mailing it through the post office? Understand that each state is different, and it's important for you to know what your state law is. Decide what time you're going to vote. and make sure that you have time to vote and that you're not rushed, and consider how you're going to get to the polls. Lyft is offering a 50% discount to drive you to the polls. And this information on the screen says that the discount code is VOTE 2022, and this very convenient visual provides a lot of information that is essential for you to know. If you're planning to vote in person, make sure that you bring acceptable ID. Make sure that you check the voter identification laws in your state. Make sure that you wear comfortable clothing and be prepared to wait. If permitted, bring, a comfortable shoes. There's at least one state that has criminalized bringing water or passing out water and snacks. So be on the lookout, for that. Make sure that you bring a phone and charger, and of course, any needed medication with you. Before I stop at this juncture, if you encounter any problems at the poll, if there are any challenges to your voting or any voter intimidation, please call the following number. It is 1-866-R-VOTE or 1-866-687-8683. This National Voter Command Center is up and running now and will be 24/7 up to and including the election day. The center is manned by nonpartisan attorneys that can assist you if you are experiencing problems voting. I'll stop there for now.
Well, thank you very much. Getting back here in Indianapolis, we had a really good comment from one of our guests from Pierre. He pointed out that Senator Carrasco refused to come on the radio station to talk to people in the community. Well, that's not surprising because the way that she's running her campaign, quite frankly, I felt that is very racist. And here's what I mean. She says she's going to be tough on crime, and then she gives this example of an African-American killed another female. Very tragic situation. But guess what? The people that she's talking about is the fact that Ryan Mears dropped charges against African-American males for marijuana possession. His reason was very simple, that in Hamilton County and the contiguous areas, the white citizens weren't being prosecuted for a small amount of marijuana, and they were still smoking it. And so he thought it was unfair to just single out African-American males, which makes sense. Coupled with the fact that the marijuana has become legal in multiple states for medicine purposes and also for recreational purposes. So the trend is that marijuana is rapidly becoming legal, and why criminalize it? Moreover, even our president, Biden, pointed out that no longer they wanted people prosecuted for marijuana in the federal level. But there's some things too that I think that what Attorney Banks talked about. Now, why should you be voting? First, let's talk about young folks. What did the Biden administration do for you? Well, student loans. If you got Pell Grants and stuff, you get $20,000 forgiven. And now guess what happened? Republicans were mad as hell. They were saying that we should not let people get write-off from student loan. Nobody complained when corporations and millionaires and billionaires got tax relief and millions of dollars, or payroll protection money went to multi-million-dollar business. And they're worried about $10,000 or $20,000 being forgiven to poor folks or people that's in the beginning of their career. It's insulting. All you young folks, that'll give you a reason to abandon the Republican Party because they're not the party trying to protect your rights. And so therefore you have a reason and a motivation to vote. The second thing, if you're a senior, what's on the ballot this time around? Seniors, Social Security, government benefits, the things, the increase that you're getting this year in Social Security. You know, we got inflation, and guess what? You're getting a 7.9% raise on your Social Security benefits. Why? Because the Biden administration thought it's necessary to give you a large raise. So on the other hand, Republicans talking about cutting back. So if you're thinking about voting for Republicans, you're a senior, you're doing the wrong thing. You need to look in a different direction because they're not protecting your rights. African American civil rights. That's a subject that's dear to me. And what has happened? We have a terrible deal dealing with civil rights in courts. We see an abrogation of rights of women, women's rights, and once they get rid of women's, they're going to come after us. And what I've seen personally is that civil rights for race discrimination and things like that, it's been very difficult in our court system with a lot of Trump-supported judges. So that's on the ballot. And the economy that they're talking about, the Biden inflation, what they ignore the fact that under Biden leadership, there's been more jobs created than any time in American history, any time, by any president. We have more jobs created, and we've had increase in income, and they're complaining about inflation. Well, inflation is bad, but not having a job is a lot worse. And so we still have more jobs available in our country than people, and we have corporations making record profits. So there you have it. So if you make an excuses not to vote, you don't have any. Now, one other thing that came up, Attorney Banks, they were talking about Mayor Lightfoot in Chicago is battling an alderman who wants to support a budget for police. What's that all about? Do you keep up with that story?
Yes, I have been keeping up with that issue, and I agree with Pierre that it really does not make any sense. Mayor Lightfoot is very concerned about ensuring that our police department is adequately funded, and just doesn't make sense that there is at least one alderman who is challenging her efforts to ensure that our police department has adequate funding to support their work.
Well, I think that's irresponsible for the alderman to oppose that. When I look at Chicago had 37 shootings on one night, I'm thinking they're out of control. You need to get a lot more police officers, but you got to have people in the street to prevent these random acts of violence. I was watching a video today that came across the reel, and it was Minister Farrakhan, and he was talking about the greatest enemy to our own community now is within. He said that in the 60s, we knew who our enemies were. We were tortured, we were killed, we were deprived of our right. Now, our biggest threat to our community is from within. We have the senseless acts of violence being perpetrated on a daily basis. And so in order to stem the tide, we can be very creative. You know, we can try to make sure we do economic issues, but at the end of the day, we just run across some people that's just bad to the core, and they're not subject to being reformed. And the net result is that you do need police officers to take these people off the street to prevent harm to other folks. You know, so the idea about the funding of the police department is an idiotic idea. What you should be saying is that we need to have greater resources for mentally ill people, to have treatment professionals available to go out to deal with mental health issues. So we have to separate policing from what's important and what is ministerial type things. Like, for example, all these issues when people call, for example, if you have domestic issues that don't result in violence, or you have people that have mental issues, they should have mental health professionals. Police officers are not psychiatrists or psychologists. And so we see some violent encounters because they're not trained to deal with people like that. So, you know, and that's what we have to keep in mind. Now, one other thing too that Pierre brought up, Pierre should be a political commentator. He pointed out that nobody complained about the farmers getting billions of dollars from Trump trade war. No one was asking for the farmers to pay the money back. Good point, Pierre. That's right on point. Yet they want the students to not take advantage of student loan forgiveness. But one thing I need to point out, Attorney Banks and Grimes, I actually talked to some students about student loans, and the problem was a lot worse than I thought. It's not the fact that the students have run up a student loan, it's the fact that the interest on the loan is so high until their interest payment amounts to a mortgage payment. And so if they got $20,000 at 8% interest, it doubles every 8 years. And so they're paying this high interest. And so one of the things I think they should do is eliminate the interest component. If they did that, then these students will have a fair chance to paying off the debt. But they can't pay off the debt if the interest rate's so high, and then all they're doing is paying interest every month. They'll be paying for interest for the next 100 years and never pay off the debt. You know, I had one young graduate who had $160,000 in student loan. And I said, how did you borrow $160,000? She said, I didn't. I borrowed $90,000. It's up to $160,000. I said, whoa. And so that's the problem we're dealing with student loans. So the young folks got to get motivated today to go out and vote. I voted the first or second day for early voting. In Indiana, we started early voting 30 days out. I missed the first day this year. Normally I do it on the first day. I did it on the second day, me and my family. We do it every election. Don't miss any. We try to vote on the first day of early voting. And that way, no matter what happened, if I get sick on election day, and like Attorney Banks said, you have to plan to vote, but voting early, you can do it at any time. So if your state allows early voting, get off the station day, go out and vote today. Yes, Milton.
I apologize for my in and out here, but I've had bad communication here with my electronics. So let me just say this before I forget. I don't know what's happening in Chicago and where Brother Farrakhan is. And I don't know that I agree wholeheartedly with his analysis. Yeah, I do believe we have a problem in our cities, especially here in LA. And from my reading, I believe Chicago too, is that there's a lot of us killing each other too much. And that's a fact. But to say that it's the biggest danger in our community, I don't know that statistics and information fully support that in that it was a headline in the papers this week where the county of LA just had a supervisors meeting where they agreed to settle 5 cases of misconduct, excessive force, and ill treatment of denial of civil rights to just 5 people. They the supervisors agreed to settle those cases for a total of in excess of $46 million.
Whoa.
One settlement was $16.9 million for a young man who had a mental illness. Mother called the police. Police came out. They couldn't get him out of the bedroom. He wouldn't come out. He threw something at the police. Thankfully, he didn't throw anything that deadly at them. So they left. I'm surprised at that. But then she called them the next day, said, come and take him out of my house. He's crazy. He's acting bizarre. So they came again. And he had knives in his hand, but it doesn't say he threatened the police with them. And he threw something at the police and they shot him. Thankfully, they didn't kill him, but he's crippled for life. He has to have life support and people to help him the rest of his life. So they settled his case for $16.9. The other 4 cases were death cases, I did believe. And they settled those from anywhere from $8 million to $2 million. But just 5 cases. This county settled for over $46 million. So the cost of police violence, misconduct, is still very high. It's very high. And those monies could be going towards education and the help of the community, et cetera, Nate. So I still believe there is a serious problem with misconduct, excessive force, and denial of civil rights with our city police and sheriff departments. Now, I don't know the number difference. I don't know the number difference, but I just have a little doubt about the accuracy of that comment.
That's an accurate statement, because here in Indianapolis, we have a problem with them covering up their crimes with their fellow officers. So I have cases after cases that I look at, and they'll try to cover their buddy's tracks. And I got an actual case where I got the physical and scientific evidence showed they did exactly that.
Right.
Where a police officer ran over a young man off the side of the road, and the investigator did not even take pictures of the track mark. We did. And so we have the scientific proof to show he ran off the road and killed this young man. And the city, you know, they're offering almost nothing. So the case should go to trial next year, hopefully. But you see that repeatedly. And but whether you have Democrats or Republicans, that is a problem that we have in our cities. Right. But on the other hand, though, you cite those 5 cases. See, in our city, we're up to about 200 homicide this year, which is way, way too many.
Yes.
When I look at the statistics, it's not that police officers have been killing our citizens, it's black males killing black males, or black males killing black females. And that's something we have to address in our city. And I'm sick of it, because I wake up in the morning time and there's somebody shot in different spots of the city, and I'm just getting sick of it, you know. And I've been talking to the ministers and the different leaders in the city, and that's something that we have to come together and try to solve.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I just don't minimize the fact that we are still having problems. Like one of the descriptions where the kid had a gun was dropped, the officers come up on him, he's on the ground. One thing led to another, he ends up getting shot 6 times by the officer. Never had a gun in his hand when he was shot. I have a case that came to me 2 days ago where a 68-year-old man, gentleman older than you, Nate, was in a police van on his way to court, and they didn't strap his wheelchair in. They strapped him to the wheelchair, but he's in the van and the wheelchair is not strapped and secured. And he tells the guard, "Hey, you're not tying up the chair here." And she looked at him with disdain, like, "Shut up," and get in the car and drive off, the van, and drive off, and has to apply the brakes on an emergency situation going through an intersection because some guy ran through the light. Now you know what happens to the wheelchair. It takes flight within the van, and he's strapped to it. You follow me? So, you know, he's got all kinds of injuries and complaints about it, and they minimize it when they found out about it, when she check him out and drive on to the station. So, oh yeah, he was in the chair. And one of the officers did get serious about it and found out what happened and rushed him to the hospital. After surgery, they were able to talk to him. He luckily only had a ruptured hernia, but he may lose his right eye and some other injuries. So we still need to help our police get to understanding and caring for people that they've arrested and not treat them as garbage just because they are sometimes poor and sometimes minorities.
Yeah, I handled one of those cases like that where a person got injured inside of a police van. And but I think that after that, they started securing the suspects, and I've not had the unfortunate representation of someone else that got injured. So apparently they fixed that locally. And but see, my problem is that when I look at like Attorney Banks City up there in Chicago, I mean, it was a weird thing. I went up there, and for the first time I was thinking, is it necessary for me to take guns with me when I go downtown Chicago? You know, I was just thinking about that. See, here in our state, everybody can carry a gun now. You know, it's crazy. Unless you convicted of murder or something, there's a very narrow exception for felons or mentally ill, very narrow, but everybody else, you know, we have open carry. It's just like the Wild Wild West. And so now we have nobody have to have the gun permits anymore. And so you have unregulated ability to carry a deadly weapon, which is a bad idea. Whoever came up with this, the Republican controlled legislation, it was a bad idea. And so now gun ownership in America is greater than any place in the world. We're 3% of the population, but we have 53% of all private gun ownership in the world. So that's something we have to deal with, particularly in our community. But even though we have guns, I still like to see a reduction in shooting. I like to see these young men go out and vote in each election and versus trying to take people's life. You know. Okay, Pierre. Okay, Pierre, you had a question or comment for today, sir.
Oh, I just wanted to call in. You know, with respect to these shootings, let's just start in Chicago. You know, Attorney Banks can comment on this. You know, they're doing a manhunt now for a guy that did a drive-by, and 10 family members or 14 family members were hurt, and you know, in this shooting on Halloween. And you know, when it comes to, you know, some people say more police is not the answer. Yeah, me personally, I could go for more police, because more police means, in my opinion, more investigators, and more investigators or more detectives means probably more cases may get solved. I don't know what the answer is to inner city violence. I know allowing people to run around with handguns unchecked. I mean, you know, anybody can carry a gun. And that goes to the Democratic messaging. They talk about the Republicans say they're tough on crime. Well, they're contributing to crime by passing these crazy laws, but there's just no pushback on the Democratic side from, you know, about all of this violence that's going on. A lot of it being legislated by the Republicans.
I don't know
you
that.
Just can't.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
Well,
Milt.
first of all, I thought Nate gave you your own show a couple of weeks ago, and we didn't have to deal with your superior knowledge. But anyway, I don't know if more officers are going to solve the problem, Pierre. I just don't have that much confidence in more policemen.
Well,
The result of where that has been applied necessarily is something more got to be done with the training, the psychological interview and acceptance of the ones that we have. And something has to be done with our young people on the respect for life and the feeling that everybody has to have a gun because the other guy has a gun. And until we get rid of that mentality, we're going to have this gun problem with our young men. So I don't know that more numbers in the police department will solve our problem. That's my observation.
I think LA could probably use some more police, because I guess according to statistics, y'all got less police per population. I mean,
Well,
you know, y'all got what?
I don't know if more
Millions
cops
of people
will solve.
out.
I'm sorry.
Probably
I don't know
won't.
if more cops solve the problem. I got body cams now that's exposing the policing by the police in some parts of LA, especially Compton and the Watts area, the South Central area, where the cop will be driving down the street. He sees a car illegally parked, an infraction, not a felony or a misdemeanor, and they jump out with their hands on the gun, telling the person to get up against the wall or stop if it's a pedestrian walking next to the car, and they push them up against the wall. They start frisking them without any articulable fact to support suspicion of a crime being committed or planned or having been committed. And no tense is a crime about. They just investigating this illegally parked car as if they're making a felony stop. And that's the type of conduct that leads the community to resist, resent, and not feel comfortable with the police in their community. So it's not the numbers, it is the policing that's part of the problem, I think.
I think that a comprehensive strategy and solution is required, and that we need adults at the table developing that strategy. A lot of this work has been done, but in terms of the strategy, but it hasn't been, of course, implemented across the nation. I agree that there are too many guns in our communities, and that this doesn't happen in other countries, specifically with respect to policing across our nation. There was tremendous work that was done during the Obama administration and continues to be done. The Obama 21st Century Policing Report and Recommendations speaks to a comprehensive approach. It's not just about hiring more police officers on the streets, but it's the recruitment, the training, the psychological testing of police officers. It is ensuring, adequate funding and budgeting for police departments. It is about engaging the community. When I was growing up, there was something called community policing. It's a comprehensive approach, and one size is not going to fit all. We do know that currently police officers are deployed in cases involving mental health situations and homelessness, for example. And it's just important that appropriate funding be allocated to ensure that there are professionals that can address mental health concerns and provide that support. And so it really is a balance, and the community policing models, in my view, is a critical part of that overall comprehensive strategy.
Yeah.
Hey, Attorney
I
Banks.
would guarantee you, Pierre, you, nor Miss Banks, nor Mr. Lee, and nor I would appreciate the way I see on the body cams by the officers themselves, an officer coming up to me and I haven't done any crime. I haven't done no crime, but just because I am in a certain neighborhood and walking down the street and approaching me as if I'm a criminal and searching me and frisking me, and then after an hour of detaining me, said, go on, have a happy day. That is not good policing, and it is disturbing, and it creates a resentment. And that's not following the policies that's written. We got a lot of nicely written and worded policies, but the actual application and the practice is different, as these body cams are showing. And so I just think that there is, like Ms. Banks said, there's a lot more to this than the numbers, man.
Okay,
Right.
let's go.
Hey, Attorney
Yeah.
Banks, real quickly, how was that policy of not pursuing, not chasing folk up here in Chicago by police? How's that working out?
At this point, I don't have any further information, Pierre, that I can provide to you. But after earlier this year, when Chicago implemented a policy not to foot pursue in certain situations, after there were 2 police killings of 2 young people. And in both of those cases, no charges were brought against the police officers. Frankly, I couldn't believe, Pierre, that there was not a foot pursuit policy in Chicago or across the nation. And so that policy now does not permit a foot pursuit in the case of misdemeanors and other and some other violations of the law.
Okay, let's go to the next
thank
caller.
you very much.
Okay,
Damn.
okay. Next caller, you have a question for us today.
Hello? Hello?
Oh, you got a question coming for us today, sir.
Brother Nate, and Attorney Banks, Attorney Grant, thanks for taking my call. Brother Imhotep here. And I'd like to lead off with one of our great so-called founding fathers, which I don't think, as much as I study history, I don't think Ben Franklin was a slaveholder. But Ben Franklin said,
He was a
those
racist.
that give up, he was a racist, right? But he said, those that give up liberty for security deserve neither. Pierre, I'm gonna repeat that. Those that give up liberty for security deserve neither. And I've got 5 research studies here: USA Today, Washington Post, New York Times, LA Times, Harvard, that all have done extensive research of hiring more police. And even the police they interviewed in the USA Today article said more police doesn't stop crime. More police doesn't stop crime. The police even say this. Matter of fact, see, we can forget feelings. Let's go on facts. The facts are that more police only prevent 6% of the crime, according to most all the studies that I just cite. So even the police agree that more police don't stop crime. We have a police budget in America that rivals military budgets from other countries around the world, even Russia. I think our police budget, according to the numbers, rivals Russia and China's military budget. Now, what does that tell you? I said, so I'm tired of black folks talking like they want to see the 94 crime bill come again. I talked to Reverend Sharpton maybe a couple months ago. We tried that, Pierre. It didn't work. We tried the 94 bill. It actually goes back to Nixon, war on drugs, but Reagan ratcheted up in 86. Okay, and then Clinton gets the heat, but actually it got ratcheted up in 86 with Reagan. We tried this. It doesn't work. Haven't you seen? All we had was an explosion in the criminal of people in prison, mostly for low-level felonies or misdemeanors, and yet it didn't stop anything. What we have are sociological issues, economic. Judge Mathis says it's mainly beefs going on out here in his travels. It's mostly beefs. Now, how is the police going to stop a beef? How are they going to? How you in your own home can't stop a beef? That's what Judge Mathis says. It's not so much drugs. It's mostly personal, interpersonal relationships. So I would say, starting at the elementary level, like I'm doing with some of my younger grandchildren, is teaching them how to deal with interpersonal relationships, how to understand how to remove yourself from situations. There's no foolproof method, but I think teaching and education should deserve a little bit more money than trying to hire more cops that have been militarized against its own citizens. The United States government is never supposed to use the military against its own citizens, yet they do every day. And they definitely do it against people of color. This is a fact right here. An FBI agent in the Carmel area, in the Hamilton County area, was interviewed. Okay. And he talked about how with his studies and with their research and everything, they know where a lot of drug distribution networks are in Hamilton County. Yet politically, he was told he couldn't go and bust them. So he asked, this is a black FBI agent. So he asked why. He said, because these people got a lot of political connections up here. And if you ruffle these feathers, they will shut us down. Our communities are over policed. Let's just be honest about it. Because I left that game Sunday. Drinking and driving kills more people than a gun. Folks are falling down, getting to their car, and there was not a stop there to watch out for drinking and driving. There was no, publicly, people don't even think about drinking and driving and what they kill. But the gun or drugs is the first thing they throw up there. So it's all political. And we got to get through the minutia and understand that we have an issue in America with guns being in the wrong people's hands, Look what you got to go through in Japan and Canada and most of the places to own a gun. You got to go through 80 hours of training in Japan. You can't even get the gun after that. You got to wait another 3 months before they allow you to go and get it. Canada, they just stopped selling them, period. When they had a mass shooting in Australia, they barred assault weapons, haven't had a problem. New Zealand, they barred assault weapons, haven't had a problem. The problem is the culture here. So we got to change the young people's mindset and change this culture around to put a dent into this. Hiring more police ain't gonna do nothing but ostracize and victimize the very poor and the people who are already being ostracized and victimized. Where's the common sense at here? Thanks for taking my call.
Wow. Well, we got both sides of the issue covered, Attorney Grimes. I mean,
You know, I agree with the gentleman.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I want to point out to everybody, that is that in most states, one of the things I run across, because the election is next Tuesday, and I want to make sure that we give you some legal advice on this issue. If you've been in prison, most states allow you to vote once you get out of prison, once you get released. If you're in the jail, not convicted, your rights are never taken in the first place. But in Indiana, Illinois, and California, being released from prison, you can vote right away. The reason I'm saying that, I ran into a young lady when I was in the neighborhood who had been convicted of a misdemeanor, wanted to know whether or not she could vote. I said, of course you can. You know, I mean, I was trying to think, where do you get this idea that you can't? Well, you know, we had the state of Florida who did everything possible to try to keep people from voting. And they're trying to select the voters instead of the voters elected candidates. And so, but these states, for example, restore your rights automatically. California, Colorado, Connecticut, Hawaii, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Montana, New Hampshire, New York, New Jersey, Nevada, North Dakota, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Utah, and Virginia. And then see the states that it's the most restrictive: Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, Arizona, Florida, Delaware, Kentucky, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Wyoming. What I can figure out is that when I look at those states, each of those states, with the exception of Delaware and Kentucky, they have Republican governors. And so I think that that's something that we need to work on in the future.
But you know, Nate, but again, that big lie, the big lie that is perpetrated by them, the Republican Party, hell with it, is that if you're a felon or a criminal or you got a crime, crime and vote doesn't go together. You can't vote, whether it's an infraction, misdemeanor, or a felony. And if I say that loud enough, I'm going to scare a lot of the people who probably would go vote in that situation, just because I say it's a crime and I look authoritative and I look official when I say that. And man, I don't need no trouble with the police. That's how I'm going to feel. I don't need no trouble. Y'all take care of this. I'm going back to bed, or I'm going to stay in the house. I don't want no trouble. And so they have people intimidated. You know, it's shameful, but that's what happens, I think. You know, because when I hear people ask me, I go, well, what's your crime? What did you do? You know, have you done your time? I just don't want to be bothered with it. People are afraid.
Okay, let's take one call. Okay, caller, you have a question for us today.
Hi, good morning. My name is Renee Schulk. I'm in Austin, Texas area. I am running for Justice of the Peace in Williamson County, Precinct 3, and I would like to talk about what's going on in the state of affairs of the judicial systems across the United States, particularly in Texas.
Wait a second. Your name is what now?
Renee Schulk, Schalk, and I'm running for Justice of the Peace in Precinct 3 in Williamson County, Texas.
Oh, you down in Texas?
Yes, sir, I am.
Well, thanks for joining us up here, and I hope that you have some success in your campaign. And
well, thank you.
How's your voter turnout looking down in Texas?
Oh, it's looking pretty good. We are doing amazing for a midterm election. I would be the first African-American elected to a Williamson County level seat, so I'm excited about that. And I wanted to call into your show because I used to live in Indianapolis. And so I'm basically calling to let you guys know that, what you're talking about also reaches across all the states. We are definitely trying to make sure that we have people in positions that are going to represent the African-American community and people of socioeconomic backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds. And I'm really excited to be a part of your show.
Well, I think you were calling in, and I hope you much success down there. I'm looking forward to the governor's race. I hope that Beto O'Rourke can pull it off down there. I know he had an uphill battle, and you have an attorney general down there that seemed like he's corrupt to the core. I don't understand how he's a credible candidate, but I don't know.
Well, that's the point of the. Thank you, and that's the point of the call, is that we want to get people in positions, particularly in judicial positions, that work with law enforcement, so that we can get, so that we can make some changes and have some representation across the table, so that we can get some of these people out of office who are not there to do what they're supposed to do. They're actually there just holding a place spot, so that they can move up in the ranks and make these laws that are pretty asinine, to be honest. And so police corruption is only as bad as the people that are doing the oversight of the police community. And if you have people who are doing oversight who are willing to overlook the corruption, then you won't have change, and then it'll affect our communities, and it trickles down, as you know.
Are you a lawyer, ma'am?
I am not a lawyer, and you don't have to be a lawyer to be justice of the peace in Williamson County or in Texas. You really just have to have a degree. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yes,
answer that question. What matters do you preside over, if I may ask?
We are responsible for evictions. We're responsible for traffic violations. We're responsible for truancy. We're responsible for small claims. We're also responsible for, we do death notification. So we have an array of areas that we're responsible for. And once again, we have, for the community, that's correct.
I respect that.
Okay. Well,
Thank
you very much.
If we have people that look like us in these type of positions, which a lot of people don't understand the importance of these positions. If we have people that look like us in these positions, we can be more equitable, we can be more fair, and we can bring more experience to the table that reflect what the community looks like. And at this point, many of our communities in some of these areas do not look like what they used to look like. They look more like people like you and I. And so representation really matters.
Absolutely, Renee. And I really appreciate your comments regarding the importance of citizens understanding who the judicial candidates are on their ballots, and also to print off a copy of those ballots and know who's on the ballot before you go in to the polls. And it's really important to know who those judges are. So thank you very much for just emphasizing the importance of the candidates for judges on ballots across our nation.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for that.
Okay, thank you. Well,
thank you.
We reached the end of our show again, and there's just one message I need to leave with everyone. That is that if you're not voted yet, if there's early voting in your state, please vote today or tomorrow or Monday. But don't let Tuesday go by and don't vote, because this is the most important election of our lifetime. Every election now is, because democracy is on the ballot this time around. We saw on January 6th of last year, we saw people that attempted to overthrow the federal government. And those same people now, 350 some odd people are running for office. Democracy is on the ballot. Freedom is on the ballot. The American way of life is on the ballot. So get out and vote, folks. And we're going to be off next week because next weekend is Veterans Weekend is a holiday. And I like to give a shout out to all the veterans, particular ones I talked to last weekend at the NAACP convention here in Indiana. And so, and all special guests, thank you for calling in. Of course, our superstar panel. Thank everybody. We'll be back in 2 weeks.
Bye, everybody.
you.
Take out your camera and take pictures of police officers performing their legal duty.